Right. So I think some people will be a bit familiar with the three horizons, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it this morning. Just give a bit of a high-level overview, because actually what we're going to be doing through the day is working through this kind of process. Over the past year or so, excuse me, while we've been starting to think, where do we go from here as a movement? You know, as Neil said, we've made a bit of a splash. We've got some things going in our first 2 or 3 years. But clearly, our ambitions are much bigger than that. Our ambitions are for really changing things over the next few years. And so we've needed to start to think about what our strategy might look like to do that, and how we might enact that strategy. And so we wanted to find a way of doing the thinking to underpin the strategy. And some of us were aware of the Three Horizons model. A few of us spent some time with Graham Lester and colleagues from the International Futures Forum. It always makes me think of International Rescue when I say that, and Thunderbirds. We spent a few days up in Scotland with them a few years ago, thinking about Three Horizons and how it might be helpful for people trying to work out how to make big change happen. So we thought we'd use it to help our thinking. So I'll just say a little bit about what it is, if you want to just put the next slide up. So it's a framework to create a map and to focus what your action needs to be. So, and the way it's done is these three horizons, they're kind of time and activity horizons. So if you look at H1, business as usual, there's a lot of that going on at the moment because it's business as usual. And what we hope is that through bringing about the changes we want to bring about, less of that will happen over time, and significantly less over time. That's not to say that none of what we're doing at the moment will happen. Some things will have to be retained, even if adapted. And H3 is the emerging future. This is where we want to be over time. And at the moment, there might be a little bit of that happening, but we want to advance that significantly over time. And then H2, disruptive innovation, as is described there, is the stuff that we do to get us from where we are now to where we want to be. Stuff is a technical term I like to use. So yeah, just to kind of spell that out a bit more. H3 is the future. It's where we want to get to over time. It's a new way of doing things. And this is where we start our thinking, because you have to start from a compass or a North Star. If our vision was made real, what would be happening? What would be in place to make it happen? And what glimpses of that do we see now that we want to see grow and develop? And then we do thinking about H1. And this is the ways that older and disabled people currently experience care and support, and the ways our society offers and organises it. What is actually going on at the moment that we want to move away from? Which things will we need to retain? Which things will we need to change, etc. Our business as usual. And it's a way of context mapping as well. What are the things that are like to help or hinder us as we make a move towards the future? And H2 is the stuff, the activities and the innovations that people are trying or we might try. In Three Horizons model, they divide these up into sustaining and transforming. So sustaining are ways of helping the existing ways of doing things better or more effective in some way. I gave the example of stuff that I've been involved in a lot over my career, of person-centered approaches as essentially being sustaining innovation. So trying to help personalize and humanize our existing way of doing things, largely, that they can be part of transformational, but they're often sustaining. The transforming stuff is the game-changing stuff, the stuff that really shifts power, that gives people the proper opportunity to design and create their own futures, people and communities and groups, and that things like self-directed sport, if done properly, would be transforming innovations. If people really could take control of the money power and communities could take control of the money power and use those to design and create what works for them, that would be transforming. That's why we worked so long on things like personal budgets. Obviously, currently, that they're held in such a way that they're often not transforming for people. So those are the three things. You start with H3, where do we want to get to? You think about H1, where are we now, and what does that mean that we need to think about in trying to move towards H3? And then what are the things that we can do, some of which already exist and need to be developed and built on, some of which we might need to invent to get us to the future we're trying to do. And there's much more kind of complex ways of doing it than me giving you that 5-minute introduction, but that's it in a nutshell. The next slide. So it gives us an opportunity to have a useful conversation about what's happening now, what's the desirable future state, what are the kind of tensions and dilemmas in that gap, and this issue of how do we tackle keeping the show on the road while we're planting and growing the seeds for the future. You know, often terms like redesigning the plane while it's in the air are used to describe that, because you know, we have to keep the show on the road because it's about people's lives while we're trying to change it. We've just started this community of practice with councils. Brian is a member of it for Doncaster, and we've started to use the 3 horizons thinking in that. And it's kind of interesting, really, that people describe their current local authority, their council context and the context with partners, and the things that they see that they want to change in terms of practices and policies and behaviours and values and how resources are used and all the rest of it. And quite a few of those things are kind of in their control, but they also identify things that really set the conditions for what they're trying to do, that powerful forces that keep things as they are, and which, if we're not taking action on those forces, it's going to really limit the ability for progressive people at a local level to make the kind of changes that we want. So it feels like those are the things that Social Care Future perhaps needs to focus on most. At a local level, people are doing this in order to chart their path towards the future that we're describing. But we really need to give them a helping hand, I think, by shifting some of the things that are currently restraining them, that are not things that are within their gift or within their power. It feels like to me that that's probably where Social Care Future needs to help most. I remember if there's another slide, so is there another slide? Going forward, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah. So in the initial thinking we've done about this, and you'll have seen this in the Towards an Equal Life from Here to There paper that we shared recently, we've identified what it feels like a 3 kind of key areas of activity that connect together, that are the business of the Social Care Future movement. One which is really about reshaping expectations and imagination amongst public, politicians, people, professionals, all of us, towards the North Star that we're seeking. Building people power as a critical underpinning means through which change can be made, and identifying and supporting the enactment, as it were, of disruptive innovations and systemic changes. So those are kind of 3 areas that it feels like we're occupying that space. We're considering what our activities are under those headings, but there's space for us to think further about that, and hopefully today will help with that.